Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm Keisuke Mori, and thank you for coming my tech talk. Today I would like to talk to you about build your own Google Home using Raspberry Pi. And here is a table of contents. First, let me introduce myself, and I want to talk about overview. And second part is settings of Raspberry Pi and settings of Google Assistant. And third part is how to create Google Assistant applications. I want to show you 3 examples, and I want to explain it, and I want to show the demo. Finally, I want to do the conclusion. So let me introduce myself. I'm Keisuke Mori, and I'm from Tokushima, Japan. And I worked at 2 IT companies before, and as systems analyst and application engineers. And now I join the Code Chrysalis and enjoy the new technologies. Also, let me introduce my technical skills. Before I joined the Code Chrysalis, I used these technologies such as jQuery and Java and Spring and so on. Yeah, of course, this kind of technology is used a lot of systems, but it's not latest technology. So I felt I was behind the trend, and so I wanted to learn new technologies. And now I joined the Code Chrysalis, and I can run these modern technologies such as Node.js, Express, GraphQL, React, and Vue, and Heroku, and so on. So now I'm sure I'll be a full stack engineer. Okay, overview. Today's my topic is how to build the smart speakers in Raspberry Pi. And this figure shows the application's concept. If I say something phrase, then smart speaker listens to my voice and recognizes it and connect to the some applications and get information and return me by voice. This is application's concept. Okay, next thing is settings of Raspberry Pi. So what is Raspberry Pi? Raspberry Pi is developed by Raspberry Pi Foundations, and it's small and cheap computers. And yeah, you can buy various models which has different specs such as CPU and memories and price. Raspberry Pi is the highest model is about 5,000 yen, and the cheapest model is about 1,000 yen. So it's very cheap. And also Raspberry Pi can attach some sensors. Yeah, it means can measure the temperature and can measure the humidity, and you can use it in your applications. So Raspberry Pi used for educations because it's cheap and it can do so many things. So students can learn the basic of computer science and IoT's technologies. And also Raspberry Pi uses for industries. In this case, Raspberry Pi uses a supercomputer, and also some of them uses Raspberry Pi and create Kubernetes clusters. And also, Raspberry Pi is used as hobbies. Some developers created game emulators by using Raspberry Pis. So Raspberry Pi is used so many industries. Here are the machine specs and accessories I used. I choose Raspberry Pi 3 model B+. This is the highest model. And CPU is 1.4 gigahertz, and quad-core processors, and memory is 1 gigabyte. So maybe it's less than your smartphone. And micro SD card. I choose a 16 gigabyte micro SD card for safety, but it said at least 4 gigabyte SD card is needed. And also, I use charger, HDMI cable, and protection case. And protection case is very important because Raspberry Pi is very delicate. So if you drop your Raspberry Pi, then the data will disappear. So I highly recommended to use this kind of protection case. And monitor, I use, you can use any kind of HDMI monitors. And but if you want to bring your Raspberry Pi to outside, I highly recommend it to use this kind of monitors. It's a monitor, but it also protection case. So it's very useful. And also I use a keyboard and mouse. And also I recommend it to use this kind of keyboard. This keyboard matched keyboard and trackpad. So you just use this one to manipulate the Raspberry Pi. And I also use microphone and speakers. And here is the hardware architectures. As I mentioned before, I use mouse and keyboard, and charger, and HDMI monitors, and microphones, and speakers. Yeah, here. And this is a hardware architecture. And next step is how to install the OS to Raspberry Pi. So News is installer. News is OS install managers provided by Raspberry Pi Foundations. So News means new out-of-box software. And I highly recommend to use News because for beginners, because usually if you want to install the OS to the Raspberry Pi, you need to write OS images to your SD card. So it means you need to use other applications. But in case of News, you don't need to use writer applications. You just copy the file to your SD card. You just copy the files to SD card. So you finish prepare the OS images, and you insert your SD card to Raspberry Pi and power on. Then you can see this kind of screens, and there are many OSs in Raspberry Pi, such as Linux and Windows 10 IoT and so on. And you can choose the OS images from this Windows. But I used Raspbian OS because Raspbian OS is recommended by official, and also Google Assistant recommended these OSs. So I choose Raspbian. Okay, next is settings Google Assistant. So if you want to create smart speaker applications, you need to enable the Google Assistant APIs. So first, open the browser and go to the Actions on Google Console page, and if you do not have the Google account, you need to create your account. And next, you have to create a Google Cloud Platform project and register your device. In this case, you need to register your Raspberry Pis. And this screen shows my actions on Google page. And I already created a project. So you need to create a project here. And next is go to the Google APIs page, and you have to enable the Google Assistant APIs. I already enabled the Google Assistant APIs, but if we go to this page, you can see the buttons, and so you can enable the Google Assistant APIs. And finally, you have to create a credential in this page and download the credential and put it to your Raspberry Pis. And this credential is used to call the Google Assistant APIs. And so I used Google Assistant SDKs. Google provides two SDKs to develop the applications. One is a Google Assistant service, and one is a Google Assistant libraries. So this figure shows a difference of both SDKs and Google Assistant service. Google Assistant service supported many architectures. It means Linux and Windows and so on. And also, Google Assistant service supported many languages. It means Python or Node.js or so on, many languages. But this SDK is very simple. It means if we want to use this kind of hands-free activation, it means if you say, OK Google, then speaker return response. If you want to use it, you need to implement it by yourself. So you need to write your code. On the other hand, Google Assistant libraries. Google Assistant library only supported Linux, and it means Raspberry Pi Model 3 and other Linux machines has same specs or more better specs than Raspberry Pi 3. And also, it's only supported Python. But Google Assistant library is very rich. It means you can use hands-free activation or timers and alarms. You can use these functions natively. So I choose Google Assistant library because I use Raspberry Pi 3 and I want to use Google Assistant functions. So next step is install SDK and install the sample code. So go to your access to your Raspberry Pis and install the Python 3 and install the SDK, Google Assistant SDK package, and install the sample code. And finally, you have to generate a credential, and this credential is based on your downloaded credential. And you have to generate credential, and this credential is used to call the API. So after you finish the settings, and before you run the sample code, you need to register devices. And you just run the Google Assistant demo command, then your Raspberry Pi is registered in Google Cloud. So you can run the sample code. Okay, and yeah, I prepared the movies, but I want to show you the demo. Okay, maybe hard to see, but this is a console window, and this window connects Raspberry Pi by SSH. So this is the inside of Raspberry Pi, and this is a sample code, and I'm going to run this command. Yeah, now my speaker listen to my voice. So, hey Google, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. What can I help you with?
Yeah.
Hey Google, please give me a joke.
Sure, here's one of my favorites. I once fell in love with an encyclopedia. I was completely infatuated.
Thank you, Google. Yeah, you can run sample codes very easy, like this. So I explained two topics, how to install Raspberry Pi and how to install the Google Assistant SDKs. And from here, I'd like to talk about how to create Google Assistant applications. And yeah, IFT, I used IFT to connect the web services. And IFT means if this then that. And IFT is a platform to can connect the web services to the other web services very easily. So you just set the web services as this statement, and other web services as that segment, then both applications can connect each other. So if there are so many applications can use in IFT, for example, Twitter and some SMS and email and Evernote. Yeah, these applications can use in IFT and can connect each other. Okay, first example is send a Slack message by your voice. Here is the concept of applications. When you wake up in morning and you feel you do not want to go to work, then you say, hey Google, I do not want to go to work. Then your speaker listens to your voice and recognize it. And your smart speaker call the Google Cloud. But if you set IFT, IFT hook this command, and IFT pass the command to Slack, and Slack posted message to channel. Yay! And you can fall asleep again. This is a concept. So, how to set up the IFT? This is a Google Assistant settings, and you just input the phrase and you just input the assistant response. So it means in input field, what do you want to say? And response field, what do you want the assistant to say in response? And I want to share you important point here. This input field should be simple and easy to say, because if your message matches the text of text by recognized your smart speakers, if matches, then if hook the your command and post to the Slack. So yeah, this input field should be simple. It means you don't have to write any symbols. It means such as comma and period and question marks and so on. You don't need to write here. And next is Slack settings. Yeah, you can choose a channel or direct message here, and I choose channels here. And also, you can input the message to post Slack here. And finally, you save it. Okay, I want to show you the demo. Hey Google, I do not want to go to work.
Posted the message to Slack.
Nice. So go back to my, this is my test Slack channel, and you can see this one. Yes, I posted 331, and I said I'd like to take a day off today. I have a cold. So as you may know, I succeeded to post a message to Slack, but one problem is here. Message is sent by IFT, so I couldn't override these icons and names. Yeah, it's a sub point. Okay, next example is check the weather and commute route. Here is the concept. When you wake up in the morning and you say, "Hey Google, morning," then your speaker listen your voice and access to the weather and calendar and maps informations and get informations and return to me. And it will be raining today, so I can prepare the umbrella, and so I can go to work finally. This is the second example's concept. And in this case, you just change the settings of your Google Home applications. So first, install the Google Home applications and open the assistant settings. And you can create routines, and routine consists of some actions. It means this is examples. This is a routine examples, and routine consists some actions. In my case, I use tell me about the weather, tell me about my commute to work, tell me about today's calendars. And these actions are already provided by Google, so you just use it. And here is the routines examples. I created this custom routine. So I'll show you the demo. Hey Google, morning.
Right now in Minato, it's 14 degrees and clear. Today, it'll be clear with a forecast high of 15 and a low of 6. It should take 6 minutes by car.
Yeah. So yeah, inside the smart speakers, a smart speaker access these information, weather and calendars and maps. Yeah, if you do it in your smartphone, you can see these screens. Yeah, this is a second example. And last one is taking memo by your voice. And here is the concept of applications. When you are saving, you got a great idea. So you say, I got a great idea. Hey Google, please record blah blah blah. Then your smart speaker listen your voice and recognize your voice. And yeah, if hook your command and access to the Evernote, and Evernote create a note. Yeah, you can fall asleep again. This is the application's concept. So here is the Google Assistant settings of IFT. It's very similar to the past ones. So you just input the phrase, you just input the assistant response. But one different thing is the input field. Yeah, input field has $mark, and $mark means variables. So in this case, you say please record blah blah blah, and blah 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 is a variable here. So you need to input, you need to type the dollar signs here. And this is a setting of Evernote. And you just input your note title, and yeah, body is you do not need to change the bodies. This text field means $marks variables, so you don't have to change this field. And just save it, and yeah, it's okay. So I want to show you the demo. Hey Google, please record good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Save the memo in Evernote.
Nice. So this is my Evernote page, and you can see this note. This note is created a few seconds ago. So yeah, taking memories correctly. Oh, good morning. I see. Yeah, as you may know, I succeed to record my voice. But yeah, I want to share the two things. In this case, yeah, I tried testing to speak long sentence, but it's hard to recognize the smart speakers. If I couldn't say it at once, then smart speaker stop listening, and so it's hard to recognize. And and yes. Okay, conclusions. Okay, I introduced the Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi installing is very easy. And I also said how to install the Google Assistant SDKs, and also I showed some examples, and I created some applications using IFTTT, and now I feel smart speakers potential because you said one phrase, you said something phrase, then your speakers listen and recognize and get the information and return the message for me. So I think this kind of technology is still developing, but in near future, we can do more great things by using smart speakers. And finally, I want to share the tips. And if you can speak 2 or more languages, I highly recommend it to use one language, because Google Home can set 2 languages, and in my case, I set Japanese and English. And sometimes smart speaker didn't recognize my wake up word, because in case of English, I say, "Hey Google," but in case of Japanese, I say, "Okay Google" or "Ne Google." So it's different. So I guess
I'd help, but I don't know the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Google. I guess these speakers listen one language at first. So if you use 2 languages, and if you want to say difficult things, and if you couldn't say a phrase at once, then smart speaker try understanding the other languages. In my case, I think I say English, but my speaker understand my voice as Japanese. So it doesn't work. So I highly recommend to set one language, because if I set one language, smart speaker try understanding one language. So accuracy of recognition is good. This is my tips. Right. Hey Google, please say thanks to everyone.
In Japanese, you would say, みんなありがとう.